Have you ever really stopped to think about how, real wealth is actually built? I don't mean just inheriting it, but forging it, sometimes from, well, from basically nothing.
It's a huge question, isn't it?
Ugh,
And it's fascinated people forever.
absolutely. And that's exactly what we're doing today. A deep dive into a classic text that claims to hold the answers. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're unpacking Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, How to Prosper Even in Hard Times.
Yeah, and this is way more than just some self-help book. What we're doing in this deep dive is really distilling the experiences, the collective wisdom of over 500 people.
500.
Yeah, individuals who achieved, great wealth. And often they started with nothing tangible, just as Hill puts it, thoughts, ideas, and organized plans. It's about a practical philosophy, really.
And what's so fascinating, I think, is where it came from, directly from Andrew Carnegie. He actually entrusted Hill with what he called the astounding secret of his riches.
Right, and that set Hill off on this massive, like, 2-decade quest to actually document it all.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to pull out the most powerful insights, the real actionable stuff from this book.
Exactly, give you a kind of shortcut to understanding the core philosophy. Not just about money, but about personal achievement overall.
And we'll use specific examples from the book to really bring these ideas to life.
Should be good.
Okay, let's jump right in then. Hill kicks things off with this idea of a secret in the book. He doesn't spell it out, but he says it'll sort of jump from the page if you're ready for it. Calls it a magic formula.
Mm-hmm. And it's validated, he claims, by thousands of people from all sorts of backgrounds. But the key thing here, and this connects to the bigger picture, is that this secret, it's not just a trick for getting rich. Hill sees it as more of a universal truth, philosophy.
A philosophy for what, exactly?
Well, for cultivating a mindset that leads to, yes, abundance, but also like higher personal fulfillment, navigating life better, more harmony. It's really about fundamentally changing how you see and interact with the world around you.
Okay, so where does that start? What's the first step? Hill says the absolute starting point for any achievement is burning desire. Sounds simple, but this is where it gets really interesting, I think.
Right, because he's very clear just wishing for something. That's not nearly enough.
No. He talks about needing a keen, pulsating desire, something that becomes, well, basically an obsession.
An absolute obsession.
Think about that story of Edwin C. Barnes. His goal wasn't just to get a job with Thomas Edison. He had this definite desire to work with Edison as a partner.
Even though he had, what, no money, no contacts?
Exactly. Nothing obvious going for him. He literally rode freight trains just to get near Edison's lab.
Wow.
Took the lowest job available and just waited. For 5 years.
5 years, that's serious commitment.
It really is. And he talks about how Barnes basically burned his bridges, like Cortez burning his ships, no turning back.
So there was no option but success in his mind.
Pretty much. His success, becoming Edison's partner, came down to that one definite goal and just pouring everything into it, refusing to quit.
That's a powerful example.
And Hill shares an even more personal one about his own son. His son was born without physical ears. Doctors said he'd likely be deaf and mute forever.
Oh, wow, that must have been devastating.
Totally. But Hill refused to accept it. He developed this intense, burning desire for his son to hear and speak normally.
He didn't accept the prognosis as final.
Not at all. He spent years planting that desire in his son's mind, telling him stories to build self-reliance, making him believe he could be normal. He even used a Victrola, the old record player, placed it against his son's head to try bone conduction for sound.
That's incredible. And did it work? Well, amazingly, yes. The son eventually did learn to hear, first with a hearing device.
Yeah.
But here's the really remarkable part. He took what could have been a massive handicap and turned it into his life's mission.
How so?
He dedicated himself to helping others with hearing loss and eventually got a major role with the very company that made the hearing aid that changed his own life.
That's an amazing story.
It really is. And like the Barnes story, it's not just about persistence, though that's huge. It shows how a really specific, non-negotiable mental picture, that burning desire, can literally change how you see obstacles.
Unlocks things you didn't know were there.
Exactly. You start seeing paths forward, and it gives you that conviction to act. And to help you, turn that desire into actual results, Hill gives those 6 steps.
Right, the practical steps. Let's run through them.
Okay. First, fix the exact amount of money you want. Be specific.
Not just a lot of money.
Nope. Exact amount.
Yeah.
Second, set a definite time limit. When will you have it by? Third, state clearly what you'll give in return. Value for value.
Okay.
Fourth, Create a definite plan, and this is key, start immediately, ready or not.
Don't wait for the perfect moment.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Fifth, write it all down, clearly, concisely. Your amount, time limit, what you'll give, your plan.
Got it. And the sixth?
Sixth, read that written statement aloud twice a day. Once before bed, once when you wake up. And as you read it, you have to see and feel yourself already having the money.
That's the visualization part.
Yes, what he calls developing money consciousness.
Yeah.
Saturating your mind with the desire so completely that you genuinely feel like you already possess it.
It's not magic then.
He argues it's not magic, but a powerful psychological state. It primes your mind to notice opportunities, to attract them almost,
Yeah.
and gives you the guts to act.
Okay, so you've got this burning desire. What keeps it going, especially when, things inevitably get tough?
That leads perfectly into the second principle, faith.
Faith! Hill calls it the eternal elixir of thought.
Exactly. He sees faith as the active ingredient. It gives life, power, action to your thoughts.
The antidote for failure.
The only known antidote, he says. And it's what connects you to what he terms infinite intelligence.
Infinite intelligence. What exactly does he mean by that? Is it religious?
Not necessarily in a conventional religious sense. It's more like, think of it as a universal reservoir of creativity, ideas, solutions. When your mind is really focused, open, and fueled by faith, you can kind of tap into that potential, like a collective consciousness of innovation.
Okay, I think I get that. Can you give an example? Well, the Henry Ford V8 story is a classic one here. Ford decides, definitely, he wants an engine with all 8 cylinders cast in one single block.
Right, and his engineers, every single one said, nope, can't be done, impossible.
But Ford's faith in his vision was unwavering. He just kept saying, go right ahead, I want it and I'll have it.
Despite failure after failure.
Yep, he just persisted. And persisted until, almost like magic, Hill says, the secret was discovered.
His determination, his faith in the possibility, literally forced the solution into existence.
It seems like it. Ford won.
And there's another, maybe even more staggering example, the creation of U.S. Steel.
Ah, the Charles Schwab story.
Exactly. December 1900. Schwab, who was basically Andrew Carnegie's right-hand man, but not widely known then, gives this after-dinner speech to J.P. Morgan and the absolute titans of finance.
Just casually after dinner.
Well, maybe not casually, but he turned on his personality, his charisma, and laid out this incredibly clear plan, a plan to reorganize the entire steel industry. And the core of it was bringing Carnegie's massive empire under the Morgan umbrella.
That's a huge idea.
Huge. And Schwab presented it with such force, such absolute faith in its execution, that the idea itself, in that moment, was valued at something like $600 million in the deal that created U.S. Steel.
Wow. $600 million for an idea pitched after dinner.
If we connect that back, it's a perfect illustration of Hill's point. Thought, backed by strong desire, has a tendency to transmute itself into its physical equivalent.
An intangible idea, fueled by faith, becomes concrete, immense wealth.
Precisely. It's about the power of conviction manifesting reality.
Okay, so we've got the internal stuff, desire, faith. But what about knowledge? You can't just wish your way through everything.
Absolutely not. And that brings us to specialized knowledge and the mastermind.
Right, and this is key. Hill emphasizes it's not about general education, like having lots of degrees.
No, it's about knowing where to get the knowledge you need when you need it.
And knowing how to organize that knowledge into workable plans.
Exactly. Access and application, not just accumulation.
The Henry Ford story during that libel trial is perfect here.
Oh yeah, where the newspaper called him an ignorant pacifist.
That's the one. In court, the opposing lawyers tried to trip him up, asking him trivia questions like, who was Benedict Arnold? Basic stuff to show he wasn't educated.
And Ford's response.
He basically said, look, if I really wanted to answer that foolish question, I have a row of electric push buttons on my desk, and by pushing the right button, I can summon men who can answer any question I desire to ask.
Boom. Mic drop moment in the courtroom.
Pretty much.
And that perfectly illustrates the mastermind concept.
Okay.
Ford didn't need to know everything. He knew how to access knowledge through others. He leveraged their specialized skills.
A collaborative alliance, he calls it.
Yes. And the mastermind has two sides. There's the economic benefit. Cooperation is just more powerful and efficient. But there's also what Hill calls a psychic aspect. Not supernatural, but synergy.
Synergy, like the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly that. When minds truly collaborate in harmony, they can spark ideas, create solutions that none of them could have reached alone. It's like a third invisible force emerges.
Harmony seems important there.
Crucial. Hill stresses the need for perfect harmony within the group for it to really work.
Okay, so this idea of leveraging others naturally leads to thinking about how you present your knowledge, your services, right?
Precisely. Because at the end of the day, the world pays you for what you do or what you get others to do.
And Hill has a formula for that too, the QQS formula for marketing yourself.
That's right. QQS, quality, quantity, and spirit.
Quality meaning doing your work efficiently, effectively.
Yes, in the most efficient way possible. Quantity means giving all the service you're capable of giving, really putting in the effort.
And spirit.
Spirit is about your attitude, agreeable, harmonious conduct, being pleasant to work with.
And Carnegie apparently really emphasized that last one.
Hugely. Carnegie believed that harmonious conduct, a pleasing personality, could sometimes even make up for slight deficiencies in quality or quantity. It reflects that shift away from the old, arrogant, public-be-damned attitude.
To more of a we're here to serve you approach.
Yeah, exactly. We are obligingly at your service, sir.
So how do you apply QQS practically?
Well, Hill suggests creating a detailed personal service sales plan, like a super resume or a bound brief.
Treating yourself like a valuable product you're selling.
Precisely. He tells a story about a young man who basically wrote his own job description and salary as a junior executive, presented this comprehensive brief, and got the job on his own terms.
That takes guts.
It does. But it raises a really relevant question for you, the listener. Today, in this world where we talk about partnership, employer, employee, customer, how effectively are you marketing your unique skills?
And are you cultivating that harmonious spirit? It's food for thought.
Definitely.
All right, desire, faith, specialized knowledge, the mastermind. What's next? Next up is a big one, persistence. Hill calls it the insurance against failure.
And he's blunt.
Yeah.
There's absolutely no substitute for it.
It's that grit, right? The
Yeah.
ability to just pick yourself up after you fall flat on your face and keep going.
Exactly. Keep on trying.
The examples here are pretty stark. Fannie Hurst, the novelist.
Yeah, 36 rejection slips.
36 from just one magazine, the Saturday Evening Post, before they finally accepted her work.
And she pounded the pavements for 4 years, just determined.
Total refusal to quit. Or Kate Smith, the singer.
Sang for years, often for free apparently, before hitting it big.
Yeah, eventually earning a weekly salary most people didn't make in a year back then.
It's incredible persistence. And Hill has this interesting idea about it. Like, there's a hidden guide testing people.
Testing them how?
Through setbacks,
Yeah.
discouragement,
Yeah.
seeing who can take it.
Mm-hmm.
And those who endure, who persist, they get rewarded not just with their goal, but with this deep knowledge.
What no?
The knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. You learn resilience, you find new paths.
So failure isn't final, it's feedback almost.
If you have the persistence to see it that way, yes. Hill lists 8 factors that help build persistence, things like a strong motive, desire, self-reliance, plans. But honestly, for many of us today, just making persistence a habit is the real challenge.
It's easier to quit.
Easier to quit, easier to get distracted, always looking for the quick fix. Persistence requires deliberate, daily effort. It's a choice.
Okay, we've covered the driving forces, but what stops people? What holds them back?
Ah, yes. The internal enemies. Hill calls them the 6 ghosts of fear.
Ghosts. Sounds dramatic.
It is, but he argues they feel very real. They exist only in the mind, but they can be just as damaging, just as paralyzing as any physical threat.
And what are these 6 fears?
He identifies 6 basic ones.
Yeah.
The fear of poverty, criticism, ill health, loss of love, old age, and death.
That covers a lot of ground.
It does. And he says these fears are devastating because they paralyze your ability to reason clearly. They kill your imagination, destroy self-reliance.
Let's focus on maybe the most common ones, poverty and criticism.
Sure. The fear of poverty is incredibly destructive. It leads to indecision, doubt, procrastination. Just freezes people.
And criticism.
The fear of what other people think. Hill says this robs you of initiative, makes you afraid to be different, to stand out. He even jokes that maybe men go bald because they wear tight hats out of fear of ridicule if they didn't.
Huh. Okay, maybe a bit dated, but the point stands. Fear of judgment is powerful.
Very powerful. And he connects worry directly to fear.
How so?
He defines worry as sustained fear caused by indecision. You worry because you haven't made a firm decision about something.
So the antidote to worry is making a decision.
Prompt and firm decision. That's the cure, according to Hill.
Okay, fears. What about the other internal enemy? Alibis.
Ah, yes, the constant excuse-making.
We all know people like this. Maybe we even do it ourselves sometimes, if only.
Exactly. If I didn't have a wife and family, if I just had some money to start, if the economy was better, if I had connections,
The list goes on.
it does. And Hill is ruthless about alibis. He calls them the child of one's own imagination and says they are absolutely fatal to success.
Because they shift responsibility away from yourself.
Precisely. They are convenient opiates for failure. So this really leads to a challenge for you, the listener. Hill pushes for serious self-analysis.
Looking honestly at your own fears, your own go-to alibis.
Yes. Asking yourself tough questions to identify where you might be holding yourself back. And then, crucially, having the courage to correct it.
Take ownership and make a change.
Make a decision. Act. Don't just recognize the fear or the alibi. Actively work to overcome it.
So, bringing this all together, what's the big takeaway?
I think the core message is one of empowerment. These principles, desire, faith, knowledge, persistence, overcoming fear, they aren't magic tricks.
They're what? Laws of nature?
Hill calls them eternal laws of nature,
Mm,
available to absolutely everyone, but you need the faith and the courage to actually use them.
they're tools. Tools for self-determination.
Exactly. Tools for turning those intangible ideas and desires kicking around in your head into actual concrete reality.
It puts the power firmly back in your hands.
It really does. And that leads to that incredibly powerful closing thought from Hill.
Which one?
There are no limitations to the mind except those we acknowledge. Both poverty and riches are the offspring of thought.
Wow. That's quite a statement. Poverty and riches both start in the mind.
That's his core argument.
Hmm.
So as you, our listener, reflect on your own goals, your own aspirations.
The final challenge is, which ghost, which fear are you going to face down first?
And what definite decision, however small, will you make today to stop making excuses? To, as Hill might say, turn down a glass on that fear and start moving forward.